welcome to another episode of Read It with Whiskey. My name is Laura Juntunen, and I am your host. I am a self-published author and an avid reader, and you guys, today, I stepped out of my comfort zone. Actually, the last 2 weeks have been totally out of my comfort zone. Last week, we talked with Dan Petrosini about his book, Corey's Dilemma, and this week, we are talking with K.A. Masson and her book, Alter Ego. So both last week and this week are actually thriller-themed books, and those are not usually my go-to reads, but I have been loving getting out of my usual genres and diving into the world of thrillers. So Alter Ego by K.A. Masson is incredible. I absolutely loved it. I read it really fast, basically binge read this thing because you guys, I wanted to make sure that her book got featured in season 1 before we step into season 2, which will be only fantasy sci-fi. So Alter Ego has been on my list for a while, and I was so excited to be able to talk to Kat. So a little bit about Kat. Kat lives in London with her teenage son and their black cat, Slinky. She has worked in graphic design for over 20 years, and she loves to bring the life of words to others. She began writing Alter Ego as an accident. She emailed the Faber Academy and she started the Start Your Novel in a Week course. And so with a stroke of luck, she got the book completed. She has always loved books with a psychological element. She's fascinated by the crazy things that normal people do when pushed by fear, anger, jealousy, and hate. Kat is also an avid runner, loves the cinema, photography, and art. She also cannot live without coffee, and she's a pretty decent meringue baker. That's kind of cool, right? So her book, Alter Ego, is her first novel. She's working on book 2, as you will hear in the interview. But here's a little glimpse into what Alter Ego is all about. Pounding on the door, my 7-year-old son shaking me awake, my head fuzzy with sleeping pills, the hallway flashing with blue light. This morning, my life will change forever. Alex Kindrew is juggling single parenthood, work, and dating, with a wild, impetuous streak that's hard to keep in check. She struggles to find a balance and feels perpetually guilty for the choices she makes. In K.A. Masson's domestic noir thriller, Alex begins a passionate affair when an old flame gets in touch. But one morning, the police arrest her for his attempted murder. Someone is framing her. Can she prove her innocence as the evidence mounts against her? Start reading this fascinating portrayal of a woman caught between her desires and responsibilities. Oh, this book was just so great, and I really had a great time talking with Kat about this novel and about some work she's been doing to add on to this novel and in her second book, which she will be bringing out to us in 2022. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Welcome to Read It with Whiskey, an interview podcast highlighting self-published authors. I am your host, Laura Juntunen. The purpose behind this podcast is to help authors grow their audience while also introducing readers to their new favorite authors. Let's get to know the person behind the page. Sit back, sip some whiskey, and lean in to these self-published authors. All right, it is time for a Laura J. Live update. So June has been fascinating. As I talked about last week, I have been transitioning a few different jobs. Things have been happening where I'm not working full-time anymore. I'm working a few part-time jobs. And it's just been a lot on my plate. So other than the podcast, I haven't gotten much done in the realm of writing or editing or anything, unfortunately. So we shall see how much editing we can get done in these last few days of June. So for my Laura J. Live update, basically just saying that I'm plugging along. I am attempting to do the editing book 2, Oscillation Rising of the Shockwave series, attempting to get it out to the beta readers, hopefully by July. But as we know, I originally had wanted them to have it by the end of May. So we'll see how that goes. But I am definitely keeping up with all of this podcasting stuff because you guys are loving it. And I am loving bringing you guys all of this podcast stuff. So these episodes just make me so happy, and I'm so excited to bring you guys all of these different authors. And I've mentioned it for a few different times, but season 2 is going to have a transition. So we've got a few more episodes of season 1, and these are all books outside of the fantasy sci-fi genre. And then season 2, we are jumping in hot and heavy for the sci-fi and fantasy. And I'm really excited to be bringing all of that to you guys because I know that is where you guys thrive. It's where I thrive. And I think it's just going to be so much fun to talk about these fantasy and sci-fi books. So let's get into this interview with K.A. Masson. This episode of the Read It with Whiskey podcast is brought to you by Coffee Over Cardio. I've been using Coffee Over Cardio for a really long time, and I'm so excited to be an affiliate with them. So there is a link in the bio, but if you want to go there on your own, all you got to do is use my code 10LauraJLive. That's 10 LauraJayLive, and you will get 10% off your order. Hello, Kat, and welcome to Read It with Whiskey. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thanks, Laura. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to talk to you today. We're going to dive into your book, Alter Ego, and I usually don't read thriller, but I think you've converted me. So I was so excited to read your book and just get to know your characters and everything. It was so fun. But first of all, before we dive into the book, tell our listeners, why did you decide to become a writer?
Well, gosh, it's a bit of a long story, really. I hadn't written anything in detail since I was at college, really, and I realized the other day that that's 30 years ago. So that shows you how long it had been. I think I wrote a dissertation as part of my my graphic design degree, but before that, anything imaginative was probably when I was at school. So that's even longer. And the reason I started was I was having some really terrible problems in my relationship. My ex-partner suffered really badly from depression, and I do kind of touch on that in the book as well. And it was actually, I mean, I don't even remember making a conscious decision to do it, but I just started jotting down some thoughts and about how I was feeling. And we had a young child together at that point. So I was really very concerned about what his father's depressive kind of mood swings, what effect that would have on him. So it was just a way, I literally started making notes about how I felt. And that's how it started, really. And somebody said, oh, you should do a blog. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about writing. I don't know anything about blogging. But I just kept adding to it. And then as time went on, I just had this real desire to write. And I was too busy with work. I didn't really have a chance to write in detail, but I would just write on a little Post-it note and put it in a book. So I ended up with this massive book of Post-it notes that didn't mean anything, really to anybody else. But I was like, oh yeah, I remember feeling that terrible thought.
That's so incredible. And I love that you took an experience that you were going through and you put it into a story in a way that it's almost like it was a personal therapy, it sounds like, to where it could help you get through some of those emotions. So
yeah, absolutely. It was complete. That's completely, you're bang on the money. And it did. I mean, it absolutely did help to, I mean, I don't know. I think me personally, I'm not very good at discussing my emotions or my personal problems with people. I'm very good at talking to them about theirs, but I guess I don't really like being the center of attention, really, to be honest. So I didn't find it very easy to talk about it. And depression, I mean, we talk about it so much more than we did, but I really struggled. But I really think writing my thoughts down helped me to come to terms with what was happening, really. So
definitely to get all those thoughts out. I love that. And you mentioned work a little bit, so I did want to touch on that. So you are actually a graphic designer and you do that full time.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about that and how that tied into creating your own book cover too.
Sure. Well, I've been working as a designer for 30 years now. So I started off working for agencies in London. I live in London. And then probably about 20 years ago, I went freelance. So I've been working for all sorts of different people, lots of arts organizations and charities, lots of charities. At the moment, I'm doing some fantastic work with a charity who tackling climate change. So particularly within London, there's at the end of the month, there's a week where there's a summit, and they are very heavily involved in that. So that has been fantastic. We're producing lots of children's materials that they can do, lesson plans that can be done in schools. So really, really fantastic.
And then you got to be your own client creating your book cover.
I did. And oh my word, what a nightmare.
no, tell us how that went.
It's not. It's just that when you're working on something yourself, you've got infinite possibilities. So I started off. I mean, and I did go, from pillar to post a little bit. I had a kind of idea in my head, and it was actually more a case of getting that to work than really struggling to kind of think of an idea. So I'd taken my partner is actually a filmmaker, but he's very good with a camera as well. So he actually took the components and then I photoshopped everything together.
Okay.
And it started off looking really, really kind of esoteric. And yeah.
I'm just going to hold it up for people who are watching the video version.
So actually so the cover looked very kind of like it might have been something very kind of literary from the 1990s or something that would only be kind of sold in in really ultra cool bookshops. So when Graham, my partner, looked at it, he said, you need more color. So I had pretty much the shape of what's there, but he said you need to bring some color in. So I tried some different kind of tints and backgrounds and things, and that was when I brought in the orange, and it literally worked. So sometimes thank you. Yeah, it completely did, because at the time I was also working with some young filmmakers, and they were really obsessed by. I was designing some pitch decks for them. When they looked at the cover of their pitch deck in kind of on a page with lots of other thumbnails, say on Netflix or whatever. And if it works at this size, then it's going to work. So that was that. I did a screenshot of an Amazon page and put my book cover, and just to see how
to see how it would look glancing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first one didn't stand out at all, but then the one with the work with the red added completely popped, as you say. So yeah, it was a really good collaboration between my other half and me. So
good. Yeah. So do you think you'll do all of your covers moving forward?
I think I probably will, just because I'm such a control freak. I'm just getting it out there. I think I'll probably be a little bit more focused on what I need. And I think also, book cover design has changed so much over the years as well. And now it's a shame, I think, they're not quite as kind of imaginative as they used to be, really. So that, you're kind of, if you're writing a thriller, it kind of has to look like a thriller. It can't look like a book of poetry.
Exactly. And it looks like a thriller. It has that edgy vibe to it where you can understand there's a mystery to it. So it really matches. Yeah. And you actually said something where you want to have control. And a lot of the people I bring on the podcast, they're like, I became a self-published author because I can't give up that control.
I heard that in one of your podcasts early the other day. Yeah, absolutely.
So did that have a big part in playing how you decided that you wanted to be a self-published author?
No, I don't think it did. But in retrospect, I think I would have been a complete nightmare if I'd gone down the trad route, to be honest. I did try and get an agent, and I just found it, it's a gatekeeper mentality. It's so true. And I just don't think I fitted into their kind of tiny little kind of square in a round hole or whatever. So their
molds didn't fit. You didn't fit into it.
No. So I talked to actually the police advisor who helped me. He talked to me about Adam Croft, who has written about writing, being an indie author. And then came across Mark Dawson's self-publishing formula as a result. I mean, I had no idea it was a thing at all. So, this was probably 3 years ago, I think now. So when I thought, oh my God, that's just incredible. So, but I think what I was also really very aware of is that if you're going to go down that route, then you have to make sure the editing is really, you're using professional editors. Certainly for me, that's what I thought was what I needed anyway. So
exactly. And you can tell your book is very clean, very polished. And I can tell that you took time to make sure that it was perfect, because it is.
Thank you.
It's perfect and so well written. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but like the aspect of how you kind of time hop between different times within the story, I thought that was very well done. And there's some books that I've read where it's too sketchy, it's too patched and jumps too quickly. But the way you wrote it in the parts, I really, really liked that, because I was able to follow the story so much more concretely than some other books that I've read.
That's really good. That's really good to hear. And I think also what the thing I wanted to get over in that time hop way of writing it was that people change. in that
Exactly.
time as well, people's outlook and their, their emotions, and not to mention their physical, but what's happening, where they are, where they're living, so
Exactly.
that kind of thing as well.
Now that we're diving into it, I think our listeners need to know what your book is about. We haven't talked about that yet.
Sure,
So if
sure.
you want to fill in the listeners, what is Alter Ego about? Tell us a little
Okay.
blurb about it.
It's about a woman in her early 40s. She's a single mum, and one morning she's woken by the police, literally at the crack of dawn, and they are arresting her for the attempted murder of her boyfriend, basically. So she's never been to a police station, never had anything like this happen. So she's thrown into this terrible situation, and she realizes that somebody is framing her. She just doesn't know who it is. So so we've got to figure out who that is.
I really like that you started with that scene, because obviously it makes sense to start with, okay, why are we going to go back and look at this history? And that's what we did. We figured out, okay, she's arrested. Now what happened? What was leading up to this? And we went all the way back.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you got your book published, it was published in 2020.
That's
Correct?
right. Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
did it feel that first time you held your book in your
It
hands?
was absolutely incredible. It really was. And, I've actually connected with quite a few writers through Mark Dawson's course, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And we all say the same, you're crazy. I mean, you'll know this as well. You're crazily busy getting ready for it. And it's kind of almost just another thing to kind of tick off the list. But at the same time, it's this incredible thing that you've got this book in your, in your hand. You go, my God, and then you go through. And I remember thinking, I'm going to turn to a page and I'm going to spot a typo straight away. That was my thinking.
I think that's a fear for everybody. It really is.
And in fact, when you're in the throes of reading, you often don't notice it anyway, do you?
Exactly.
So,
but yes, it's such a great experience. Finally having your book, being able to hold it and just have it physically in your hands, because you've done so much work, so much hard work to get this book down. Just to finally hold it, it's surreal. When it comes to this book, you already kind of touched on it, where some of the things in your own life inspired the story. But what other aspects or what things in life inspired this thriller?
Oh God! Well, I suppose I had this experience about my ex and his depression, and actually, and again, I realised I was around 40, and I knew that I didn't want to be single, so I started dating, and I had a couple of friends who had done it, and it was this was over 10 years ago now, and it was kind of still a little bit not what everybody did. I mean, now I've got kids in their in their early 20s, certainly in London, do dating all the time, but it was at the time it still had a little bit of a there was something still a little bit dodgy about it. And so I started kind of trepidatiously to do some dating, and then I realized that this world where people meet people, people just lie, I mean, I'm sure women do as well, but men lie about their height, they lie about their age, their photos of 15 years old, all of this kind of crazy stuff. And also, I mean, but meeting really fascinating people as well, that they might not be the love of your life, but they're still interesting people as well. So I kind of wanted to, and everybody in the book some of them are based on real people, but they're all kind of disguised, very, very heavily, really. What I wanted to really get over was that trouble, that Alex, my character, has between what she wants to do. She wants to go out and have a bit of fun, but she's a single parent. She can't rely on her ex to come when he says he's going to come. So it was that, kind of like she's being pulled, but from two different directions kind of constantly. And she makes some really terrible choices as well. But I think we all do, don't we? We all do what we think is the best for us or our children or whatever. But sometimes in hindsight, they're not, they're not. So that was, I wanted to bring some of that in. But I also attended a crime workshop at The Guardian, the newspaper in London, about crime writing. And I was, I actually hadn't really thought about writing crime. I mean, I've always read crime, but I thought, well, I don't know anything about it. So that was what kind of stopped me. But when I went to this workshop, I just thought, oh my God, there's all this information, all this advice and expertise that I can, that there were 4 or 5 people on the panel who were able to talk about it. So
Mhm.
when I, after I'd done that, I was like, oh my God, I can get so-and-so to do this, and and then she can be arrested. So it all kind of came, all the component parts kind of came together, really. So
yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that, if you had done any specific research with police stations, or if you had talked to anybody, interviewed them about how they actually bring people through the system. So
yeah,
you did a course on
sure.
crime writing. Did you do any
Yeah.
real life talking with police officers or anything?
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, he's actually, consider him a good friend now, actually. It's
Mhm.
a guy called Graham Bartlett, who was a chief superintendent in Brighton, down on the south coast here. And he was a detective for many years, started in the 80s. And I think he retired maybe 7 or 8 years ago now.
Okay.
But he now helps writers
Oh,
to,
wow.
advising them about the police procedural aspects. But he's just brilliant. I mean, he's helped loads of people like
Mhm.
Peter James and Mark Billingham, Elliot Griffiths. He's got
Wow.
a huge list of authors that he helped. I met him at the Guardian masterclass, but we then also had quite a few video chats as well, because I sent him, I don't think I'd written a huge amount at that point. This was maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. But I gave him a kind of synopsis, and he said, okay, well, that wouldn't happen. This could. But actually,
Okay.
together we worked out ways that it's the unusual things that happen. A book isn't going to be interesting if it's just everything goes according to plan.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he helped me sort of like, not only, he helped me to understand what would normally happen, but what could happen if the stars align and everything goes wrong, which is what you want in a book, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think authors really need to do that research on that type of thing, because
sure.
unless you've gone through the system and been arrested, you really don't know what it's going to be like. So doing that research is really important. So, and I recognize some of the names you said that he's worked with. So that's amazing that you had that opportunity, that you were able to work with someone who's been doing this for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super
so now
cool.
I was so lucky to have met him, because I wouldn't have known that somebody like that exists. I think that he said, actually, we did some filming with him a couple of days ago, like at the end of last week, and I asked him, are there any other people doing it? And there are a couple, actually, but I think he's certainly on the top of the list. And you probably have them there, because your kind of laws and how the police operate is obviously going to be very different. Yeah.
So when you were writing, like I said before, there was multiple time frames that we go into. We start off with Alex getting arrested. We go back, we meet and go through her dating life a little bit, and then we jump back into real life. And there's little nuggets in her dating life that are going to come back into the current now. So what was that writing process like, trying to keep everything straight and in line? And along with that, did you plan all of those nuggets of information, or did some of them surprise you yourself as the writer?
Yeah, they did. Absolutely. I didn't put all of those nuggets in at the start, but I realized, and I had no intention of writing a book, really. So it was all kind of organic, I think, is probably the best word to use, really. But as I went along, because I had this input from various people, and I talked to a couple of very kind of confidants about it as well. So I knew that to make a good crime novel, you need to have these kind of red herrings and different kind of trains of thought that allow people to kind of go off in different directions and things. So I'm a total detail freak as well.
Well,
so I remember, I kind of remember every single thing. So in a way, it was easy for me to go to, when I knew there was a bit that I wanted to put in, I knew pretty much where that was. I mean, God, if I get to book 8 or something, then that might all fall by the wayside. But so yeah, I definitely knew that I wanted to add all that. So there was a little bit of kind of retrofitting, really. But I'm writing my second book now, and I'm planning it much more diligently. Only because it was interesting. It was an interesting experience to write it the way I did. But actually, I think I want to just be a little bit more organized and
a little bit more of a plotter.
yeah
Don't
absolutely.
we all? I've tried so hard to be more of a plotter, and I'm a pantser. If I plan something, I just turn left really hard, and I end up not writing what I planned. So I've attempted, but I'm a plotter for sure. So but I wish I could be a plotter because you can do so much more. Because when you're a pantser, you have to go back and be like, okay, where did I put this? Unless you're taking really, really detailed notes, unless you're taking really, really good notes on your writing, it's going to be tough to go back and hide those nuggets sometimes.
Sure. So. But I think in a way you can be a plotter, and then even if you do take that sharp left turn, you can then veer back and take a right, so that you end up. I mean, I think with the new book, I've got beats for every chapter.
Okay.
So at least, I mean, even if I do kind of veer off, I'm hoping I'll be able to kind of come back.
Make your way back into it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the fun of it, isn't it? To be able to kind of do a little bit what you want.
Exactly. So Alter Ego, I read it as a standalone. Is book 2, is it a continuation or is it a brand new book?
It's a brand new book. Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't really thought about a series. I mean, I think it would be a sensible thing to do. So maybe the second book is, again, it's a woman protagonist, but she's about 10 years older. So she's dealing with, actually, just very briefly, it's just about a woman who, a family, their son is 17 and he's killed in a hit and run accident. So it's about them, the family, coming to terms with the loss of their son, and there's a lot of blame involved, but there's also somebody else that was involved in the accident, and the police aren't convinced that somebody else was involved, but the mum takes it on herself to find out who it was.
Another crime thriller for you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like that you play so much on the emotions of the character and you bring in all of those components, because you don't see a lot of books like that. And I think it plays so much more into what happens in Alter Ego. We're not going to give spoilers to our listeners, but you kept me guessing, and I was very happy with how you kept me guessing. So if people want to figure out what happened, they're going to have to read the book, because we're not going to tell them.
We're not going to be giving any spoilers away, definitely.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about the characters within the book. I always like to ask authors, who is your favorite character? Or if you have a favorite character, but you also like to write a different character, tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, well, actually, I think the main characters were fairly easy to write, actually, funnily enough. So I mean, I enjoyed writing both of them, Alex and Mal, her boyfriend. But actually, some of the ones that I really enjoyed were people that were completely made up. And they're slightly more, minor characters, like It's Me, who's Alex's old Japanese friend. And I just, and actually, she was based on somebody that I did meet at an event about 4 years ago, and she was tiny, and she had purple hair. She was just so incredibly interesting. I mean, she was probably, I think she said she was nearly 80, and she had such an amazing face, so many lines, and you could tell that every single line told a story. She was just incredible. So, I mean, I didn't know a huge amount about her. We didn't keep in touch, actually, but I just completely imagined what she would be like in a situation where she became Alex's kind of confidant, really, because Alex is taken away from her home in Southeast London. She moves to live with Adrian. And I think it's almost like a kind of mother-daughter bond that they have between them. So
I really liked that relationship, and she was one of my favorites, even though she wasn't, like you said, she wasn't one of the main characters, but she was a very important supporting role for Alex moving through the story. I really liked her. And then someone else I really liked was Gibson, the cop. I really liked her.
Absolutely, yeah.
So where did the inspiration for her character and her personality come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she came out of nowhere, really. I say that, but I think it was the conversations I had with Graham Bartlett, the police advisor, who I said, well, what would it be like if a woman arrives at a station, she's been arrested for attempted murder? How would people react? Would they treat everybody like they're guilty? Or do they treat everybody like they're innocent? He said to me, well, actually, people in a police custody block, they often have a sixth sense about people, whether they're guilty or not. And I wrote, I wanted Gibson to be an empathetic character as well. So I made her the same age as Alex, so she would really kind of understand, and this whole thing about Alex needing to, she was terrified what was going to happen to Ned, and her young son who was 7. She was like, my God, if I'm here for like 3 days, what's going to happen? She was really worried about him going into care or something like that. So, or somebody might say something that she'd, oh, she's never at home, she's always got a babysitter, so all these things were kind of going through her head. So I wanted Gibson to be, firm but fair, not bend the rules or anything. I mean, she does bend them a little bit. So she gets a shower when most people probably wouldn't get
right
a shower. So,
and I love
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that Gibson was able to have that empathy, and it really puts a light on there are cops out there who want to do that for people.
Yeah,
and like you said, they have a sixth sense, and sometimes they can tell when someone is not being held for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
I'm really glad you liked Gibson. That's, I did. She was really good. She was good fun to write. Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Because there's some of the police characters who aren't quite so nice too.
Yes, I like that you threw her in the mix. And it really helped the story too, because I think it helped Alex's mindset as she was in prison or in jail.
Because I think she's she's kind of going crazy as it is. So, so at least to have one nice person, be kind of human.
Exactly.
Good.
So I wanted to touch on, you actually wrote an epilogue for Alter Ego. So tell us you don't have to tell us exactly what happens, because the readers, they don't know yet what happens. So no spoilers,
sure.
But if you can tell us kind of what that story is about, what the epilogue includes.
Sure. Well, it's the epilogue is what follows on after the end of Alter Ego. So it's from the perspective of another character. I'm actually giving that away as a kind of author magnet, bonus content. So if people sign up to my website, they'll be able to get it for free. And actually, I'm going to print 100 copies to give away, so it won't be available on Amazon or anywhere else. It's just for people who would be happy to sign
I
up.
love that, because I think I know what character. I'm not going to say anything, but I have a hope of what character because I really want to know. But yeah, I loved this story. It was so great, and I'm excited for your next book to come out 2022. You're thinking?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. But if we talked anymore, I think we would get into some spoilers. So we're going to close it up, and this wouldn't be Read It with Whiskey without talking a little bit about whiskey. And you actually have some ties to whiskey in the book. So what is your favorite whiskey? And then how does it tie in? Tell us.
Well, I love I'm Scottish, so I guess I've got it in my blood, really. But I love all kind of smoky whiskies are my absolute favorite. So things like Lagavulin and Craigellachie, which is really lovely. So there's a scene quite early in the book, so it's not going to give any spoilers really, where Alex has a kind of new bottle of whiskey, and she rather naughtily takes it upstairs with this guy that she's dating, and and it all goes horribly wrong from there. So
all right. Well, Kat, this was so much fun. I'm so glad we got to talk about your book and about your writing career so far. And I'm so excited to see everything that you do moving forward. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. It's been a real pleasure, Laura. Thank you.
Kat and I had so much fun talking. Even after we were done talking in the interview, we talked for quite a little while after that. There was a few things that we talked about that I wish we had recorded, so I had Kat write down some stuff in an email just so that I can talk to you guys about it. And one of those things was music. Music had a very strong pull throughout the entire novel. Alter Ego has a lot of music references. The main characters, Alex and her boyfriend Mal, they have a very strong connection through music. And so this is what Kat wrote to me about why music was so important to her to bring into this book. Kat writes, I have always been a music fan. She received her first album for Christmas, a super awesome 70s cassette. It was a cassette of ABBA. And she loved that, and then she loved going into the new romantic movement of the early 80s, frilly white shirts, all that kind of thing. And then just being the right point in her teenage year to appreciate the indie scene that brought to the forefront the Smiths. And so in times of strife, she really has used music as a way to bring solace for herself. And it was also the same for the protagonist in the book, Alex. So when Mal's dating profile revealed he was equally fanatical, Alex, the main character, was instantly hooked by Mal's personality on this dating site. So there's a scene about halfway through the book where they take turns to play their favorite songs to each other. And it was one of the pieces that Kat enjoyed most writing. She really liked to be able to vividly picture her characters sitting on the sofa, scrolling through Spotify, and just really enjoying the music. So that was kind of the inspiration behind why Alex and Mal had the inspiration of music, because it is such a prominent part of Kat's life. You can go to patreon.com/readitwithwhiskey, become a viewer, sponsor, and you're going to be able to watch the video content of this interview. And the video content you can see behind Kat is all of her albums, all of her CDs, and it's an incredible collection. After we were done recording, I actually commented on it because it's so striking to see how much music she really has. So she is not only an avid reader and writer, she also really, really loves music. And I just wanted to bring that to you guys because we hadn't had the chance to talk about it in the interview. And if you want to have an even more in-depth experience while reading Alter Ego, you can go to Spotify, where Kat has created a Spotify playlist for the book. Just search Alter Ego, The Domestic Noir by K.A. Masson. And you will be able to listen to the audio or listen to the playlist while you are reading the book. And something else that we did not talk about in the interview, but I am bringing to you now, is that we are doing a freebie. This is the first Read It With Whiskey freebie that I am doing for the show. Kat was the first of the authors to actually ask if she could give away a book or two to my audience. So, as the Read It With Whiskey listeners, you guys are the first to hear that we are doing this freebie giveaway. You are going to go to my Instagram, at Read It With Whiskey, and there is going to be a freebie post there. You're going to follow all the directions in that freebie post. And if you are listening to this episode and the freebie is complete, you can go onto the Instagram and there will be a freebie for a different book. Entries to the raffle to win a copy of Alter Ego will be open through Saturday. So there will be 5 days to enter into the raffle. Like I said, all of the entry requirements are going to be in that post on Instagram. So go ahead and check out the post. Make sure that you are following Read It With Whiskey on Instagram, as well as my personal writing Instagram at Laura J Live, and you'll definitely be able to get into the raffle and hopefully win Kat's book. And next week, we will be talking with William R. Hinsey, and we're going to be talking about his book, Without Expiration. He is going to be here on Tuesday, the 29th of June, and his book, Without Expiration, is actually a compilation of a bunch of different short stories, and I really am excited to talk to him about his book. So yeah, tune in on Tuesday when we talk to Bill. All right, you guys, I will talk to you then.